Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Civil Rights Agenda's LGBT show. This is brought to you by the Civil Rights Agenda at 2129 Northwestern Avenue. They are always open to and welcome to any help that they can get, especially volunteers and whatnot. So if you're interested, by all means, give them a call. My guest today, and I am so happy to have this gentleman with me, it's Congressman Danny Davis from Illinois. And I'm so happy that he came on my show so that we could talk about some transgender LGBT issues. Remember, this show is interactive, so don't be afraid to call 312-738-1060. In fact, we would love to have your calls for questions or comments, as long as the comments aren't too long. Yeah, we want to have time for as many people as possible. Thank you, Congressman, for coming on this show. I really appreciate it. I think our community needs to hear more from what's going on in D.C. Than what we get. And
well, let me just say I'm delighted to be here, and I've looked forward to the opportunity to not only listen but also to learn. You know, oftentimes young people ask me, what would you say a person ought to do if they wanted to go into public office or they wanted to run for office,
okay.
they wanted to get elected? And I say that what they ought to do is learn how to listen, and listen well. Because if you listen, then you know what other people are thinking, and you also know what they are expecting, and you're in a better position now to respond to them in the way that they would want to be responded to. And since you're supposed to be representing them,
Okay.
you never asked anybody to vote for me so that I could represent me.
Exactly.
I always ask people, vote for me so that I can represent you. And so in order to represent you adequately and effectively, I need to know what you're thinking.
And thank you so much. And you hit on a great point. One of the problems that a lot of people have is listening, because listening is learning. And if you don't know anything about a subject, and part of our communities, that's the biggest problem. People don't want to listen to how we feel, why we do this, so on and so forth, what it's all about. They'd rather just say, oh, you're a sinner. The Bible says so. Well, wait a minute, okay? I don't care what anybody says. God made us all in the same image. And as far as I know, to me, God may be transgender. I don't know.
Well, you know, a guy said to me yesterday, he was giving me a lift, and he was talking about Sodom and Gomorrah. And he said, you know, the reason these cities were destroyed, in the Bible even, is because they didn't pay enough attention to the poor. And then he had some scripture that he gave to me to back that up, that the big deal was that they weren't paying enough attention to people who were poor and disadvantaged.
Right.
And in his estimation, and he's a theologian, he believes that that's what had God angry with them.
And isn't it amazing how many people and specific religions just totally misinterpret things like that?
Well, you know, one of the first times I was really challenged on my positions relative to human rights and the idea that there ought to be as expansive as possible. A group of ministers asked me to have a meeting, and this is back when I was in the city council.
Okay.
And they said, we like you, so we really like the way you do things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would help us with one issue, we would just make you our guy. And so if you would vote against that human rights stuff and lead the charge.
Oh, no.
And I said to them, I said, well, I would have thought that of all people that I know, that you all would have a greater understanding of this issue and how negatively society has dealt with so many people. And I says, I'm a little surprised, because I would have thought that in all of your training and all of your, teachings,
Exactly.
all of the things that, people who are religious and God-like are supposed to be, all encompassing and all. I said, I'm just amazed that this is your position. I said,
Exactly.
but I respect you in terms of what you think, but I don't think I'm going to be changing.
Isn't God's main word love?
Yeah.
Isn't that what it's supposed to be?
Yeah.
Not
just for some, but for all of humanity.
Exactly.
All of humanity. How can you negate that? How can you escape that? How can you, if this is what you're basing your feelings and understandings and positions about, then I think you'd get in a big argument with the Creator.
Yeah, really.
Or at least the guy that was walking around.
That's right.
And had people following him, and Jesus the Christ. I've
had more people call me names, and I just look at them and I say, I'll get to heaven before you do.
So I said, but everybody do their own thing.
Yeah.
And in Washington, what I'm afraid of, I am afraid that there are efforts to take us backwards on so many fronts, not just one front. I know black people especially who say that Trump want to erase everything that Obama did, and I said, look, yeah, I know Obama, but it goes way beyond Obama. Mm-hmm. And it goes back before Obama. They want to roll the clock back, period. I said, people had feelings about human rights and civil rights long before Obama became president or any of that. And voting rights and equal rights and all of this, and that's the fear. I think that conservatives in Washington, especially, and in other places, are trying to change the movement of the country, where those who generally were left out of the power equation have less of it than what we were moving towards.
Oh, exactly.
And that it's a big agenda.
And I feel the same way, and which leads me to a couple of questions that I did want to ask you. Do you see, and especially right now, because there are apparently, or seems to be at least, many Republicans who are kind of starting to back away from the current administration in their thinking and so on. And of course, you're familiar with the new Equality Act that's out there, that the Democrats submitted to both the House and the Senate. Do you think there are more moderate Republicans that would support something like that than we know, or not?
You know, I think that many people who call themselves or who are described as being moderate Republicans are in reality conservative Democrats.
Okay.
I'm saying, I mean, there are some things that, you know, people want to see, but other things, they don't want to make the trade-off.
Right.
They like there are some people who would love to have peace and quiet, but they don't want to move to the country.
Okay.
I think they're telling you to.
And I understand totally. I understand totally what you're saying, and it is, but, and I know that the new Equality Act is something that it is going to take a long time to probably pass.
Well, it has taken a long time to pass many of whatever becomes law.
Okay.
And that's one thing. People think more about the here and now.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't necessarily go back and look to see that there were people advocating for these positions a century ago. I'm saying, and it took all of that time. Think of the fact that women did not get the right to vote in this country till 1920, and yet we put together a constitution and all of that stuff in 1776.
Exactly.
That's a long time.
Right. Right.
And there always were women who felt that they had been left out, and they always advocated against it.
Mm-hmm.
But it took until then to get the level of agitation, the level of disenchantment, and the level of education all combined to now have women get the right to vote in 1920. And people, how could we have been so stupid all of this other time to deny women the right to vote?
Well, you know, in about 3 years ago, when I was doing my other show, I reported on about 3 years ago, Canada, the country of Canada, actually tried to give an order, an executive order, whatever you want to call it, that LGBT's information or, you know, should be taught in the sex ed classes. And Canada said, oh, yes, we're going to do that. Do you think that's a good idea for here or not?
Well, I think it's a good idea. You know, in one life of mine, I was doing work kind of as a sex educator.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
and went to, you know, all kind of interesting seminars and conferences and things about it. Even went to some of these places where they used to have communes and different things.
Yeah, communes, yeah.
And so I think that education, I think there's a difference between education and information.
Oh, granted.
I think that there are people who get information, but they don't change their way of thinking because of the information.
Right.
And then there are other people who get the information and they become educated because it causes them to move. I mean, that education is something that you do and not just something that you know. And so if you know that you've been headed in the wrong direction,
right,
once you're educated, that would mean that you're changing. You're saying it's okay. It's all right. It's not going to harm anything. The world is not going to fall into Lake Michigan because you have a human rights ordinance. So,
But the problem is, and I've had this discussion with so many people, the problem is that we have two types of people, those that are, and I don't mean this as a put down, there are people that are ignorant about things, and then there are people that may not know, but they just flat don't want to learn. So.
and refuse to learn.
Exactly, exactly. You know, I'm very careful when I say to somebody, or when I say somebody's ignorant, or whether bigoted. To me, bigoted means you know enough, but you just don't care.
Yeah, I'm not quick to characterize oftentimes people to the extent of a definitive definition.
Okay.
I will often say, well, this person maybe just is not aware. And when you were talking earlier about people listening, I thought of my kindergarten teacher who used to tell us a little thing. She'd say, a wise old owl sat on an oak. The more he heard, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard.
Mm-hmm.
Now I want you boys to be like that wise old bird. and so I've always had, since then, this notion that listening was learning.
Exactly.
That listening ingratiates you to the knowledge and information that you're picking up. Now I can do differently because I know differently.
Excellent.
And so learning and listening, are real attributes that I think for anybody that espouses to be in any kind of leadership role, that you got to listen to learn.
I agree with you 100%. I totally do. And there's a lot of people out there, obviously, that, and quite frankly, transgender community is an interesting subject from the standpoint that we've been around for 3,000 years. There's especially three different communities: the Hindus, the Muslims, and the American Indian, who all acknowledged and accepted transgenders. Some, like the American Indians and the Hindus, actually thought that a transgender person was somebody that had the capability, using both sides of their brain, and could see all issues and questions from both the male and the female perspective. And they use them quite often as consultants. And they actually put them on pedestals.
Made sense in terms of what it is that you're seeking.
Exactly.
From consultants is wisdom about, I used to run supervisory training programs and stuff like that, and before I started doing this. And I would always define supervisor as a person having superior vision, that the supervisor is supposed to be able to see further than the average worker.
And that's good.
That's why you've become the supervisor.
Exactly. Because you now have the ability to channel and help people say, okay, my vision sees you getting to here, here, and here. I can help you with that.
And it's some kind of like the whole business of defining work and how you get a job, I did some of that. And, you know, we say that the person who knows how to do something can generally always have a job. But the person who knows why it's being done will generally be the boss.
That's true. That's so true.
So,
that's very true.
This business of learning, and that's why I say education is so valuable in our society, because the more people learn about human behavior, the more people learn about everything, then the better off they're going to be, because they can explain it in a way without being in an adversarial position to others.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. They can at least hopefully appreciate where the other person is coming from and say, okay. And that's the biggest thing about the trans community is so many people say, oh, they're afraid to be around us because they're going to catch something or something like that. You know, and it's not, it's almost, you know, no, we don't care how other people live their lives as much as they care about how we live our lives.
Well, the mystique, I mean, knowledge takes things out of the mysterious arena.
Right.
Where if you can't explain something, you can't account for it, then it's mysterious. Just like many people think politics is a very mysterious business. That it's mysterious, and so since it's mysterious, only some people have the knowledge. Like when people say something to me about, well, you know, in the back room, I said, well, what can they do in the back room that ultimately does not become a part of what is known?
Right.
And so if you think so, go in the back room. It's like at church, where I go to church, you know, we take up collection.
Right.
And then somebody take the little money and take it in the back room to count it. And when people come by the collection plate, you would think that there's a lot of money being put, and, you know, they're singing and
Right.
they're being joyous and they're happy. And many of them are putting $1. And so you go back in there to count, and you be wondering, well, where's the money? I mean,
The entertainment didn't meet the funds.
yeah, somehow it looked like everybody, I mean, the pastors, everybody's just going and, hey, it's great stuff. Hey, give till it hurts. And
Exactly.
give as your heart tells you. The Lord loves a cheerful giver. You think people are just doing it to death.
Right.
$1, $1, 5 hit, $1.
And beware of the person who puts in a 5 and takes a 10 for change.
Yeah, we've had some of those too, you know. So yeah, so they're getting over the other way. So
Absolutely.
but life is kind of whatever it is that you endeavor to make it.
Why does this keep doing that to me?
And I got a little thing I say, if there be righteousness in the heart, there's beauty in the character. And so if people start out to do right
That's
by
good.
everybody.
I like that. I like that. That's good. Yeah. And I mean, when it comes down to it, I mean, that's why everybody should be able to live is, you know.
Golden rule.
Don't-
Just do unto others as you'd have them do unto you.
Don't judge other people.
Yeah.
You know, we all get judged when we're dead, because But it's up to God. It's not up to anybody else to judge anybody else.
Well, we learn judge not others lest you first learn to be judged.
That's true, too. Yeah, I've heard that. I didn't necessarily remember exactly how. Well, we're running out of time, unfortunately. I wish we could sit here and talk longer.
Well, it would certainly be fun. I've enjoyed it tremendously, and I
And-
thank you.
Thank you so much, Congressman, for being with us. I
All right.
really appreciate it. I
Thank
know
you.
you're a busy man, and to talk to us, and you had so much to say. I will ask you one last question. Is there anything that you would like to say to our transgender viewers?
It would simply be to keep believing what you believe, keep advocating for equal rights, equal opportunity, equal justice, and believe that, as Sam Cooke used to say in this song, it may be a long time coming, but I know the right changes are going to come.
Excellent. Excellent. That's so true, and I remember that song, absolutely.
Yeah,
I
it was
do.
good.
Thank you again.
All
I
right.
am so happy that you came by and were able to join us. And to all of you out there, we will be back. We will be back on the air next month. I don't remember the date. It's the third Friday in October, and we will have a guest. And we hope you'll join us. So until next month, from all of us here to all of you there, goodbye.
All right. So long.